Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. I'm Stuart Stevens, here with Jeff Timmer, a longtime Republican who was one of us who came over and decided he couldn't do it in 2015. Jeff ran the Republican Party in Michigan for years. Was kind of the gold standard of Republicans. He's been with the Lincoln Project since 20. And Joe Trippi, who had the good sense not to be a Republican, who I used to hate to go against in races, who in many ways invented modern politics with the Dean campaign, wrote a great book about it. And, you know, we're just here to talk about how great things are going in the Trump administration.
Never better.
You know, I don't know, so much winning, I don't know where to begin. But let's talk about the war. How is it possible, guys, that there were two articles of faith on MAGA? One, that Trump would release the Epstein files, and we would get to the bottom of this, and that we'd have no more foreign wars. And here we are, and, you know, Trump has not released the Epstein files, obviously, and is in a foreign war, obviously, and is probably going to go back to the Epstein files just to change the subject from the Iraq War. Let's get back to, you know, how is this possible? And how is it that something that began this unpopular, and it's obviously only getting less popular because people are getting killed, there's no resolution. How did this happen? Is it just sort of the inevitability of Trump? Jeff,
well,
what?
The thing that MAGA clearly hasn't figured out is that Trump has no concept of what was said or done before, or what will happen next. He is completely driven by the id side of his personality, the gratification in the moment, and consequences or cause and effect they don't even enter his brain. And it's clear by the way he's not only conducted himself the last 11 years on the political stage, you know, on with being in the White House now for over 5 years during those last 11. But when you go back over the last month and look at how just his social posts, in his commentary, in press conferences, either planned or off the cuff, he says 10 different things about Iran and who he's talking with, and the war is won and we still have the war to fight. Within a sentence, he contradicts himself. Yeah. It just doesn't matter. It goes back to this mindset about I can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and they're still going to vote for me. That's what he thinks of MAGA. He completely takes for granted their fealty, that he's got them so in his grip. And there's been nothing to dissuade him from that over the last 11 years, because everything he's done, they've fallen in line. They and the Republican Party, even, January 6th, the real Republicans were all aghast by that. Mitch McConnell, everybody else, and then they all got on board with the insurrection afterward, ex post facto. So he's been able to bring them into whatever he wants, give him cover to do whatever he wants, says, does, and there has been no consequence, none whatsoever for him, other than the fact he lost the 2020 election.
So, Joe, look, an unpopular president with an unpopular war heading into midterm elections. Does this have the feel to you like a big Democratic wave?
Yeah, I think it's going to be beyond Democrats. It's going to be independents, soft Republicans, whatever you call it. It's going to be, everybody keeps calling it, continuing with the old blue wave crap. This is just going to be, I think, a massive wave of change. It's not going to be, it's got nothing to do with blue. This is people saying, hell no.
That's a really good point.
No more. And so, I think the real thing here is this thing was built for him, right? He hit every one of these people that are in MAGA with, I will vanquish your enemies. Anybody you don't like, I don't like, and I will punish them for you. And I think they're much more into that than feeling any side impacts or punishment that they're undergoing, right? And they've literally been groomed to, yes, you shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, he must have had a good reason.
Right.
Even though I didn't like the blood all over the place, he must have had a good reason, right? I mean, so no, I think it's now like so self-reinforcing that, that even the war, even $4 gasoline, does it as low as his numbers have gone. And by the way, it's probably going to be $5 gasoline, within a few weeks here. But I think even all of that, MAGA is Trump, Trump is MAGA, and that's fine for him being able to rev up MAGA. The problem is it's now getting to be, that's it. You've boiled the damn water down.
So Joe,
no independents, no Democrats, and plenty of Republicans are saying.
So if you had to predict today, how many seats do you think are going to change in the House?
Oh, I think it's going to be over 30, maybe over 40. I think the Senate I lean more likely that Democrats actually pull that out. It's tougher, definitely, because of what seats are up. But I think you look at the quality of the candidates, you look at the enablers that are now stuck with just the boiled down MAGA base is the only thing that's going to, that they can try to get out. And by the way, that base doesn't tend to vote when Trump's not on the ballot anyway. So now you look at all this, and I don't see how, magically and mystically the war ends complete tomorrow and everything's back to normal in 2 weeks, which none of that's going to happen. But even if that happened, I don't see how his numbers improve, how people suddenly become more favorable to him or MAGA at this point. It's I just don't see it happening. Which means something we've all talked about, means the ramp up of even more obstacles to voting, of even more proposals and plans to thwart the election and to steal it, because there's no other way they survive this. And so that's why I actually think that's why a lot of the Republicans in office are going along with this again, because again, it's the only way they avoid the consequences, whether it's Nuremberg, whatever, because there's plenty of people who are in jeopardy here, and they're not going to, I don't think they're going to risk, we'll hold a fair election so they can put us away. That's not going to happen. So that's my biggest fear now.
We're going to see that, Joe, you hit it exactly right. The pro-democracy Americans are going to overwhelm the MAGAs and the Trumps in November. I think it's fait accompli. There's virtually nothing imaginable that can change the trajectory of this. Even if the war suddenly disappears, the chaos that they've unleashed, first with the tariffs and now with the war, into the inflationary forces within our economy, that doesn't change. Those will be lagging. The transportation costs that are spiking now in fuel, gasoline, diesel, that's going to last for the next 6-7 months. Even if everything stops today, those costs aren't going down, which just means that we need to now be looking past election day. We need to go back to 2020 and look at, Trump's not going to be the one who leaves office and doesn't control the federal government anymore. He's going to control the federal government. John Thune and Mike Johnson in particular are going to start to take positions where they say, look, the House determines who our members are. Michigan sent a Democrat and a Republican from the 7th congressional district. We're going to seat the Republican. We think that's the valid one. We're going to get into that kind of Reconstruction era rump delegations coming from states, the MAGA candidates, the Republican candidates who lost, showing up and saying they won and it was stolen. I think we're heading into a period of turmoil after this election.
Mm-hmm.
And until Congress is seated in January, that will be 2020 and early 2021 on steroids.
Wow. Wow.
But I also think that,
you think that's where we're headed?
Yeah. Look, I think that's what he wants to provoke. I think I think he's going to do this stuff. I think he's way underestimating how the American people will respond to that, because I think it will be pouring into the streets if he takes that. And then that's where we have the very big constitutional crisis or existential crisis of troops in the streets to put that down. Will they fall? All that stuff is coming. I really believe that. That's why I think people need to volunteer to be poll watchers, volunteer to stand in front of polls, put themselves between the polls and ICE or anything else that he does. I mean, I think look, we've all worked overseas, I think, in countries or seen countries where this stuff goes down. And we can all take a lot of lessons from how we, the people, responded and put themselves in harm's way. And I really believe peacefully that's what we're all going to have to do. And so volunteering now to be a poll worker, working to do what you can to keep the election, to monitor the election, to have other people there, to be at the next No Kings rally. I mean, all these things we have to preempt as much of this as we can.
Yeah, I think people don't have an appreciation to the degree to how much our elections are volunteer efforts. That they're not run by some massive corporation. They're not run by the Department of Elections. And you go out. Who are these precinct workers? They're volunteers, which is part of the reason, the idea that you could somehow scale massive voter fraud is so preposterous, because what are you gonna? You're gonna go out and blackmail little old ladies across the country? I don't know. How does this work? It just never made sense to me.
Heritage and others have looked at this, and it's like 0.00000000.
Look, I've said this over and over. The problem we have in this fucking country is getting people to vote when it's legal.
Yeah.
Not when it's illegal. I don't know who wakes up on election day and go, man, I think I'm going to commit a felony and go vote. I don't know. I think I would knock off a liquor store first. That would be more fun. It just makes no sense. And, Joe, what you're saying about post-election, I worked in what turned out to be the only elections they had in the Congo. And it was actually an impressive group from the EU and from the same sort of people they put on elections, tried to in Afghanistan and everything. And I remember talking from the UN, talking to a guy who was one of these, you've seen these types that have been in elections around the world, a sort of lifelong do-gooder out there. And I remember he said something to me once, just sort of in passing. He goes, the thing about this democracy is somebody has to be willing to lose. And I know it was just so simple and so profound, though, that, and once you shatter that sort of social bond between voters and their elections and their government, how do you get it back? I mean, I think it's very, very difficult. But let's talk about the Senate. How do you guys see the Senate playing out?
Well, I see the map as we went into the year. When you look at things historically, the map definitely favored the Republicans with the seats that they had up, the incumbents they had in some tough seats, light red states that have been moving to become more red, like Ohio and Iowa and Florida. I'm not ready to say that Florida is going to gel, but it definitely could, and with Alex Vindman running there for the Senate. But you look at the way the numbers are starting to shift in a place like Iowa and in Ohio, where the top of the ticket race with to replace Mike DeWine, where Vivek Ramaswamy has been coronated already, in public polls are out showing him behind the Dem nominee already, and substantially. David Pepper, who's a longtime friend here on Lincoln Square, is on that ticket, and that something is happening, and it's beyond. Joe, you're right. It's beyond blue and blue wave. When the special elections in Florida last week that caught everybody's attention, the Mar-a-Lago seat, the Tampa seat in the Senate that flipped. It was Republicans, registered Republicans, who were choosing the Democratic candidate. And looking at the analysis that was done there, the voter registration of people who turned out in the Mar-a-Lago district, Republican registrants had a +10 turnout advantage on election day.
I looked at that.
Wow. 9.8 is what I saw.
That's
in
how
9.8.
That's how you're getting this overperformance. Everything is all these elections, all through last year, all the specials, we get this big overperformance by Democrats. Some of it was more Democrats' energy turning out, but a lot of it was independents and Republicans walking into the booth and polls got it wrong. Democrats were going to get more support, but which I think is part of what's going on here. It's like there's the reality is, I think the polls are getting. I mean, there's proof of it, right? Every one of these elections, she's going to win by 4 or 5. She wins by, Abigail.
Mickey Sherrill. Right?
Mickey Sherrill. There's a reason, right? So they're not catching what's going on. And look, I was out in Iowa. We talked about it. Was out there for 4 days, talking to just about anybody, everybody.
Yeah.
That place is, I think it's going to be a real upset there, where we'll win the governor's seat for the first time in like forever. I think
some Spilsack.
We have two. Right, we have two incredible Senate candidates in a primary there. I want to make it clear, I love them both. They're both great candidates. They're going to have to fight it out, but I guarantee both of them.
When is the primary, Joe?
Gosh, I'm spacing on this right now.
I
want to say May, but I could be wrong. I don't want to head people off. What I want to say though is both of those, Josh Turek and Zach Walz, are both in dead heats with the Republican incumbent Senator Henson. And that is the one, I think, by the way, when we're talking about the Senate, and when you look at North Carolina with Cooper so far out ahead there.
Oh yeah.
You look at, Georgia, we all thought that was going to be like, knockdown, drag out. No one is even talking about it because of how strong we are. And so when you really look at where things, I think the seat that puts us over is going to be Iowa. And by the way, the most important thing in Iowa is Rob Sand. He's the auditor who's running for governor. And he's the only person who won statewide in 2018, was reelected in 2022. And then the Republican governor in the legislature, the first thing they did after he was reelected was strip the auditor's office of all power. So he couldn't go after corruption or anything. And there's something going on where he has struck a nerve. Iowa saw them do that there, and it was hell no. And I think he's going to help carry the like 3 House seats are going to flip in Iowa, not 2.
Yeah.
And I think
Alaska. Oh, there's a race brewing in Alaska of all,
Yeah.
Mary Portola, is running, the former Democratic member of Congress who served
and
a
is
couple
ahead
of terms
there too.
Yeah, and with that's a very libertarian, don't tread on me kind of state,
Right.
and it's not a very MAGA Republican kind of profile in the truest
And you
sense.
got Maine. You got
Right,
Maine.
In Michigan, there's been the Republicans have an anointed candidate who lost by 18,000 votes to Alyssa Slotkin 2 years ago, running again. The Democrats have a very jump ball primary going on with 3 strong candidates, but I think any one of them is going to be in a position to just beat the living shit out of Mike Rogers. Just given the climate here and the quality of those candidates, that's the Republicans' really only hope, I think, in their mind, to take one away, and it's just not going to happen.
Well, and you still have Tallarico and Paxson.
Yeah,
Looks like
Texas,
there's
right.
now look, that one's going to be tough. They're all going to be tough, but I think you're right. Even places like, look, this reminds me of 1980, for totally different reasons. But I mean,
but Jeff and I have good memories about that. So
yeah, no, but Carter had at the time, the lowest approval ratings, I think, of any president. I mean, we later get to Nixon and now Trump, et cetera. But that night in 1980, there were 2 or 3 places where we thought Democrats were in trouble and they were going to lose the seat. It was a wipeout. I mean, I remember waking up the next morning and going like, who the hell thought that this senator, that senator, this something like 8 senators went out the window, were shown the door, and I think
and then
5 of them no one saw coming. So I think that's where we're going to get this time.
That was when Republicans elected a bunch of people who had no business getting elected, like Paula Hawkins in Florida.
Right?
Because
that's going to happen this year the other way.
They were on the ballot, and they all lost in 6 years.
So, I think Dave Jolly and Vindman do not go to sleep on any of these races. I mean, I think
even Montana.
I think Montana's in play. It's just the places that we never could have imagined are in play. Doesn't mean we'll win all of them, but I think we'll win enough, particularly on the Senate side. There's plenty on the House side. There's no. I mean, look, I wouldn't put like 258 seats majority for the Democrats being. I know sounds insane, but I wouldn't. That's bigger than I said a few minutes ago. But I mean, like, it could get that crazy.
Yeah, well, already the generic ballot tests are like showing 10, 12 points nationally. And at that level, you're already talking a 25 or 30 seat game right there. Yeah. And if you go beyond that, then it's Katie bar the door.
Yeah,
it's like, there's going to be people calling the D trip going, I won. And they're going to say, who are you? We don't even know who you are.
That's what I mean. Right now, like the second district in Iowa is not on anybody's scope, right? The first and third district, everybody's talking about those are the places where we're going to flip. The second district that Hinson vacated to become the senator it ain't going well. So what I'm saying is, like, we're going to
Miller Meeks is at 28% job approval. I mean, that's
well, there's a reason Joni Ernst didn't run for re-election. I'm sure she just wanted to spend more time with her family, but you know what I'm saying.
At the hog farm. So let me ask you guys something. It seems to me that the way that we always looked at these races about what is the approval of the party and that, I don't think it's irrelevant, but I don't think it's as relevant as before. I mean, if you're an independent voter, what you think about the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, how much is that really going to decide how you vote versus, $5 gas? I mean, just because you're pissed off at $5 gas doesn't mean you love the Democratic Party.
Well, the November elections in New Jersey and Virginia were long ago before $4 gas. And independents were voting 67, 70% for the Democrat, not 53-47 one way or the other, which is usually what's going on. No, 67% voted for Cheryl, and I think it was 80% or 70%, excuse me, voted for Abigail. You see it in the polling in Iowa and other places. I mean, Trump is now down to a -12 approval rating in Iowa, where he won by double digits. So I mean, but he's it's not apples and apples, but
I'm fascinated by Iowa. It's a state, I think, with the highest literacy. I worked there for Grassley. I did, back in the day, all the Iowa straw polls, which Jeff will remember.
Back before, when Chuck Grassley only had 2 numbers in his age before he surpassed 100.
This is a true story. I can say that last century, I cut a spot for Chuck Grassley saying this was his last race. Now, we never ran it, but somewhere in the archives of my old firm, we have that spot. And that was last century. So,
well, I haven't spent any time in Iowa in my career. So
you wouldn't know.
Putting my finger on what's going on there.
You wouldn't know. So when you were out there, how long were you out there recently, Joe?
4 days, I think. Yeah, it was. And I talked to reporters. I talked to the candidates. I talked, I wasn't just, and I got a good feel for what was going on the street, with just people, at the bar or out there. And it is night and day from where it was in 2024. A part of it, by the way, I think too, is I think Minneapolis, Minnesotans and Iowans have always sort of seen each other, and I think Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska and Iowa picked up a lot more intensity and localized media from Minnesota. It was just, they were inundated with it in Iowa and Nebraska and that whole region up there. And I think that had a big impact as well. I mean, I think there's just we want to end this. And so what this is about, it's Trump. It's only one thing matters. That's what look, Democratic brand, toxic. Got it. I know we've all talked about it. It'll get, if it's going to get fixed, it gets fixed in a presidential election in 2020, somewhere with a candidate like a Obama or a Clinton or who breaks through with a totally new message or fresh message. That's how that's going to happen. But right now, I think everybody out there, when I'm looking at the numbers, they're saying, yeah, Democratic brand's toxic, but there's something now far more toxic than the Democratic brand. It's Trump and MAGA. Yeah.
Well, look, Joe, I know you got to go. Let's talk about your new show a little bit, On the Ground. What's the concept behind it? What's your?
It's what I did in Iowa. It's spending 3 or 4 days or talking to people who are on the ground. It's not us talking about what we
right
on national polls. It's about literally doing a series of shows in a state where there's a lot at stake, a lot of key races, and talking to people on the ground, and either be on the ground with them or interview people who are on the ground, who know what's actually happening on the ground, and can give them a much more granular look at what's happening there. I think we did 5 shows that they've all been released now, called On the Ground in Iowa with Joe Trippi, and now I'm about to get with the Lincoln Square folks, probably right after the show, to figure out what's the next state that we're going to, next Monday, that we'll be doing some on the ground in. I wish we had started with Texas, but we didn't get the idea. I mean, so it's follow the Tellerico, Crockett, and all that. Well, we didn't get the idea until right after. That's the thing that gave me the idea, and I think all of us the idea. Hey, let's go. What really is going on in these places? And so the first one was Iowa, but we're getting ready. I don't know if it'll be which state, but it'll be we'll be out there pretty quickly with a new show.
Well, I think it's very important that you go to Mississippi, because there is a Senate race there. There could be. Yeah. I recommend August.
Well,
you know,
football season for sure. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, at a time of the year that if you own Mississippi in hell, you would live in hell and rent out Mississippi. But I think that's a tremendous conceit because we just don't get enough of that, particularly now that reporting it's local news and all of this. I mean, it's just dead for the most part. So it's a lot of work to do a show like that. So all credit due, man.
No, thanks. No,
a lot of energy.
It really changed my view. I mean, in terms of, I knew Iowa was, I thought it was there's things are going to be close or that kind of thing. But no, I walked away. And again, I can't say enough about Rob Sand. I think that guy, we're going to be watch him. You're going to be talking about him for a long, long time. Probably one of the most talented leaders I've seen in our party in a long time.
Well, that's how you spot these people.
Yeah.
It's like, high school recruiting films when you're in Division One. Like, how is this person? I can remember very early on somebody talking about this guy, even before he gave his speech at the convention for Kerry, Barack Obama.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck? Who? Like, what?
State senator? Yeah.
Like,
yeah, funny name. Who knew?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I said, no, this is talent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, I still think we're in a world. It's one of the things, we ought to do a whole show on this, sort of the disparity between the depth of talent on the Republican side and on the Democratic side. I don't think it's really surprising because, you think about it, as a barrier of entry to succeed in the Republican Party and advance, you have to be willing to say what fifth graders know is not true, which is Donald Trump won the 2020 election. Mm-hmm. So what kind of quality of candidate are you going to get? You go, yeah, you can do this, dude, but you got to say, like, you don't know who won the president, that the wrong person won the presidential election.
That's what was so impressive. The talent on the ground in Iowa that's emerging is just I didn't expect it.
Yeah, I love that.
And so I think it's like Tellerico emerging in Texas. I mean, there are a bunch of bright young faces across the country that are going to win this year. Mm-hmm. And that bench is going to get even stronger. And I think you're right, Stu. The Republican bench is already just molded over, and it's going to get much, much worse. So we'll see.
Yeah, I just don't know. If you're young and you're ambitious and you're not a Donald Trump person, why you would want to run in the Republican Party. Because it has involved ritual levels of humiliation that is repugnant to most people.
But Stu, the reason it's clear. I mean, just stock trade your way through the whole thing and you're going to be fine. I mean, look at Hegseth. I think we can pull stuff up there. I mean, it's
look at the prediction markets. These guys are cashing in every day.
If you just want to be an insider trader, no better place to be an insider trader than be a Republican member of the House, Senate, or the administration. No better way.
Yeah, it is so fucking insane that you can be, Secretary of Defense and trading stocks. I mean, that is just
defense stocks.
It's just insane. It's utterly insane.
I just had a hunch something might happen to.
Yeah, we're going to have to order some missiles. Who knew? Yeah.
It seems like, from the, I don't know, like some sort of era of Aztec human sacrifice. But there actually was a debate in 2016 if Donald Trump was going to release his tax returns or not. And he kind of went through a period where that was. I mean, that's what these norms get shifted, and so now he and his family are making billions of dollars, and everybody's like, "Well, what the fuck? Nobody cares." It really is, as Moynihan said. What did he say? Defining decency down.
Deviancy down.
Deviancy down. Yeah, Trump, it really has happened.
Yeah. Well, when you mentioned, Jimmy Carter in 1980 and all that, I was thinking how Trump is like this malevolent version of Jimmy Carter. He's got the stagflation going now. He's mired in Iran. That's pulling him down. But, instead of, lusting in his heart, Trump is just nothing but lust and avarice. He's just, out there just glomming it all up and whatever he can. He's like this weird, bizarro version of Jimmy Carter without any of the goodness.
Yeah. I was not a Jimmy Carter guy because I was on the other side. But when you just think about it, the level of decency.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just extraordinary.
All the way. And through his post-presidency to all the way till to his 100th,
until he took his last breath.
Yeah. He was just what I mean is, we see this. A lot of people go silent after they leave, and don't. Habitat for Humanity, all the things. And by the way, this gets to the thing. In almost all of the countries where you had these kinds of dictator, autocratic wannabes taking power, violence in elections, all that, the one place you could count on was the Carter Center, sending election monitors into those countries and making sure that the elections were as fair and free as possible. And what's amazing to me is we need that here now in our own country in a way that I never could have imagined.
Yeah, it's just I agree totally.
But
all right, guys, we should wrap it up. But everybody should look for. Well, let's see. We've got that Trippi Show podcast. We've got the Two Joes, which you're doing with Joe Klein, which I love.
All
and
Trippi
on the ground, which I love. And Jeff, you have a podcast these days.
Yeah, we've a Republic, if you can keep it. We're starting year 6 now. I co-host with the longtime chair. He spent 2 decades as the chair of the Michigan Democratic Party, Mark Brewer. And we have guests, it's not just Michigan guests. We get national guests in to talk about how the role Michigan plays is one of the pivotal states with all these pivotal districts in our democracy. And so, it's
I may have to do
wherever you get your pods.
I may have to do On the Ground Michigan with you. So
let's do that. We'll go shake it up.
Yeah.
There you can go in the summer and it's nice.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks everybody for joining us. Subscribe to Lincoln Square. No one's going to save us but ourselves. Though, as I always say, if you are a billionaire, we are open to talking about it. And thank you for your support. And thanks, guys. And we'll see you next Tuesday.
Thanks all.